Hi guys, I hope that all of you all are caught up and ready to go, and welcome back to class. Just so you guys are aware, we are going to start into a new module. This is the beginning of module 1. We've been working on module 0. Now we are going to start on our module 1, so I'm really excited for this. The book that we're going to be studying is right here. It's called The Crossover, and it's by Kwame Alexander. So I'm really excited about this book for us. So let's get into it and let's get started with the lesson. So to start off, guys, I want you all to choose one story that you love to hear, or that you love to read, or that you love to tell. And I want you to write 2 to 3 sentences that describe the story and explain why you love it. Now, when we think of a story, the story that I want you to tell me about is maybe a story about how you got your name, or the way you were first showed your personality as a baby, or maybe something or someone in your family did before you were born, or a choice or decision that someone made that affected your life or their life, or maybe a family memory, a memory of a trip somewhere, or a funny story that you guys always tell around the dinner table. This is the story that I want you guys to tell me about. So I want you to choose one story that you love to hear about, read, or tell, and then write 2 to 3 sentences that describe the story and explain why you love it. Please be careful. This says 2 to 3 sentences, so I'm looking for elaboration here. And then I want you to tell me, why is the story important to you? What about this story is extremely important, or a very good story that you like to tell or hear or read? Why is the story very important to you? Explain that to me. So let's begin. Remember, in every module, we always have an essential question and we always have a focusing question. So our essential question for this module is, what is the power of storytelling? What is the power of storytelling? And our focusing question, what we're going to really focus on, is what shapes Josh Bell's sense of himself and his world. What shapes Josh Bell's sense of himself and his world? That's what we're going to be talking about today. But before we begin, guys, I want you all to add these 2 words into your vocabulary journal. These are going to be some very important words that we're going to be discussing throughout this module and throughout all of our lessons. The first word is form. And form is the shape or the structure of a story, like maybe a newspaper or a novel. And it's how knowledge or information is expressed or communicated. And then we're going to talk about content. And the content is the subject matter or the substance of the story. What knowledge or information is expressed or communicated. So basically, what is it about? The effects of an earthquake can be a content of both newspaper and a novel. This could be an example for us. So please add these 2 words, form and content, into your vocabulary journal. And even if you guys don't understand these 2 words just right now, we'll get into it a little bit later. But at least we'll have them inside of our vocabulary journal, so we can go back to it and review it as needed. So now I want to get into something else. And we've done this before. We're going to be in our wonder stage of learning. And the question that I want you guys to start thinking about and asking yourself is, what do I notice and wonder about form and content in the crossover? What do I notice about the form? And what do I wonder about the form? And what do I notice and wonder about the content in the crossover, which is the book that we're going to be reading? So an example could be, a report card is one form that communicates content about a student's grade. The story a student tells about why he or she received these grades is another form, and that explains the content of the student's grade. So if you need to read these over again, that's fine. But again, we're going to break down form and content even more as we continue throughout the module. But first, we're going to start with our notice and wonder stage, which we've done before. Remember, it's one of our instructional routines, and it's going to come up very often when we do our lessons. But before we get into our notice and wonder chart, I want you guys to look at this new instructional routine. It's called Think, Puzzle, and Explore. Think, puzzle, and explore. And we are going to think and puzzle and explore our essential question for today. And our essential question for today is, what is the power of storytelling? So when we look at this sentence or this question, we might want to say, what words in this question don't you understand? So we're going to look at this question even more, and we're going to break it down. So again, our question was, what is the power of storytelling? What is the power of storytelling? And here are two words here that I want you guys to add to your vocabulary journals as well. The first one is storytelling. Storytelling is a responsive way to use words and actions to skillfully illuminate the elements and thoughts of a story, while also helping the person who is listening to the story to use their imagination. Storytelling involves two-way interaction between the storyteller and one or more listeners. And power, which is a noun, is being able to act in a way that works well, having a lot of sway or rule over others, and being very good at manipulating or changing feelings or ways of thinking. So we want to have these two in our vocabulary journals as well, because the question we're asking ourselves is, what is the power of storytelling? And right here we've got storytelling and we've got power. So these are two of the main words that are inside of our sentence. So when we think and we puzzle and explore, we want to think about what the word may possibly mean. We may want to ask questions, which is puzzle about what the words mean. And then we want to explore what this could possibly mean by maybe verbalizing or talking to others. So inside of the discussion board that is in Schoology, I want you guys to answer this question. Based on your experiences reading, listening to, and telling, or even writing stories, what do you think is the power of storytelling? Why do you think storytelling is powerful? Take a moment here if you need to go and type this into your discussion board, and then we'll see you right back. All right, guys. So let's continue. Okay, so now we're going to start again with our essential questions and our focusing questions. And our essential question is, what is the power of storytelling? And I want us to ask ourselves, is there anything about this question that puzzles you or that you don't understand? Do you not understand something about this question? And our focusing question is, what shapes Josh Bell's sense of himself and his world? Is there anything about this question that puzzles you or that you don't understand? Please write in the discussion board. If you guys need a moment, you can take a break here and go and complete your discussion boards or adding anything to your vocabulary journal or anything that we've talked about prior to this slide here. If there's anything that you need to do in regards to the lesson, now is the time to pause the recording, and then you can come back and complete the rest of the lesson. So let's get started with our notice and wonder. So what do you notice and wonder about the crossover? So the first thing that I want us to think about when we look at this text is, what do you notice about its features? What do you notice about the cover? What's on the cover? Look at the title. Look at the way the book is written. What do you think it's about? What do you wonder about the text? Make sure that you write a detailed description of what you notice and wonder inside of your activity notice and wonder chart. Now let's look a little bit closer. I now want us to talk about, what do we notice and wonder about dribbling? Dribbling is the first piece of text inside of the book. This is going to begin on page 3. Page 3. So I want us to talk about, what do you notice and wonder about dribbling on page 3. Stop here so that you can complete your notice and wonder chart. So now that we've talked about our notice and wonder chart, let's discuss what kind of book this is exactly. And I want you guys to add this word to your vocabulary journal. The word that I want you guys to add is novel in verse, or verse novel. What is a novel in verse? Well, a novel in verse is a novel told in verse or poems rather than in prose. Some of the characteristics of this type of book are, there are a series of poems as a narrative structure. Each poem stands on its own as a complete poem and captures a specific moment or scene, idea, or development of the plot or character. And each poem contributes to the larger narrative, moving the story forward. An example is The Crossover, the book that we're going to be reading. So let's begin reading this novel in verse poem. But first, how do we read it? So let's discuss dribbling on page 3. First of all, ask yourself, how do you know this is a poem? What do you notice about how this poem appears on the page? And what do you notice about how Kwame Alexander, the author, shows us how to read the poem? Look at the first 2 lines of the poem to answer this question. Sometimes we annotate for the content of the text, but sometimes we annotate for the form. We're going to start off by annotating for the form, and then we're going to move on to content. So, we are going to annotate on how we may read this poem based on how it's written or its form. So some questions I want you guys to ask yourselves as you read is, how does the way the words are written on the page affect the way you might read them aloud? How does the punctuation affect the way you might read a line? Where would it be appropriate to read more loudly? Where would it be read quietly? And where would you pause or slow down? What expression or tone would you use? And what pace would you use? This is talking about fluent reading. When you read fluently, you read it how it's written. So let's talk about that. So right now we are going to try and annotate for form. And I'm going to give you guys a quick example of what that looks like for your activity for today. So I'm going to move my face out of here for just a second so we can kind of see what we're doing. So you guys are going to have this page inside of your worksheet, and you're going to be annotating for form. We're not annotating about what's happening in the poem. It's not your typical annotation. We are annotating for the form. Please make sure that you follow the instructions. So for example, here it says, at the top of the key, I'm moving and grooving. I'm going to do these first 2 lines for you guys as an example. So The first thing that I notice about the first line is two things. And instead of using my annotation tool, which we've done before, I'm just going to type in my text box, and you guys will have one of these as well. So it says, at the top of the key, I'm moving and grooving. The first line has a comma right here. So this tells me that I need to pause and anticipate what's to come. Okay? Then, once I pause, I realize that the next word that's after that is I'm. So this kind of tells me, and it also ends right here. There's a pause or a break here, a line break. And this tells me that this poem is really about whoever this person is. I'm. And everyone needs to stop and pay attention to that. Because whatever I'm or whoever I'm is or is about to do is extremely important. So the fact that I'm is in a line break shows me that he is important. And we need to stop and wait for what's next. Then the next line says moving and grooving. And one thing that I notice here is that all of these words are in capital. And they're also bigger than the other ones. So this is telling me that maybe I should read this a little bit more loudly. So far, this is what I have, guys. I noticed that there was a comma, and I need to pause and anticipate what's to come. I noticed that I'm is in a line break, so it shows that this is really important, and we need to stop and wait for what's coming next. And then I noticed that moving and grooving was all in capital letters, and then maybe I need to read it loudly. Okay, so this is what I have so far. So this tells me a lot about how I should read the poem. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to continue this work in your annotation for form, and I want you to tell me some things about how you think this should be read. Please be very detailed with every line. All right, guys. So once we've annotated this for form, I want you to write 2 inferences about the speaker. And when we talk about inferences, we're talking about predictions. So I want you to reread the poem first. And then I want you to identify 2 pieces of effective evidence that help you understand Josh's character. Who do you think he is as a person? And what evidence gives you this? And then complete the sentence frame. Think about his characteristics. I noticed the speaker of the crossover is blank and blank. This is going to be inside of the discussion boards. The next thing we're going to do, guys, is we're going to do what we're more comfortable and what we know more about. We do this a lot in class. We're now going to annotate for content. We're now going to annotate for content. So who is Josh Bell and how does he describe himself? We can probably figure out who Josh Bell is and how he describes himself by annotating this poem for content. And when we talk about annotating for content, we're talking about annotating what the poem is about, what's happening, things that we can learn about Josh's personality. We must be detailed here, guys. So this is every line. You should have something there about what's going on about the text, what's happening, what's it about, and what does it show you about Josh and who he is. But before you guys read the poem, remember, we always want to make sure that we understand what the poem is about. And so I've written a few words here: top of the key, dribble, fast break, free throw, layup, dunk, backboard, rim, and drive. These are going to be some words that are going to be used in this poem and others eventually in the text. And in order for us to be able to understand the poem, we have to be able to understand basketball lingo. So here are a few words that I want you guys to read through before you do your content annotation so that you can make sure that the work that you're completing is even more accurate, because now you're going to have a better understanding of what's going on and what's happening inside of the text. Once you guys have annotated for content, I then want you to identify evidence to understand Josh Bell. Let's read Josh Bell pages 4 through 5. And then we're going to annotate for Josh Bell for 2 pieces of evidence that help you understand who Josh is and how Josh describes himself. What are 2 pieces of evidence that help you understand who Josh is as a person and how he thinks or describes himself? All right, guys. Again, if you need any help, please come to office hours. Those are the best moments to come in and to get things explained. And it's a way for me to show you real time how to do something online. So it's okay to message, that's fine. But sometimes I can't really help you through a message because I can show you better than I can tell you. So if you're involved with any type of non-understanding or don't know what's going on, please come to office hours so that you can be helped. So for tonight's homework, I want you guys to read pages 11 through 36 of the crossover. And I want you to practice your fluency while reading. Remember, fluency is pace and how you read it. Do you read it loud or do you read it quietly? Do you pause because there's a comma, or do you stop because there's a line break? So I want you guys to practice reading the poems that are in the crossover with some of the tools that we've learned from today's lessons. I want you to see the handout that will be inside of Schoology, which is a fluency chart. And I want you to fill this out as you're reading your poems. All right, I hope you guys had a great time with lessons today and that you fully understand. However, if you don't, please, once again, come to office hours. I'm available. There's 2 office hours a day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. I'll see you next time.